It's weird that I have this one so high, especially after you guys had it so low. So I don't really know what's going on here.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lithography. Kramzer here with Jason, and perhaps the last living visual of Joe Steigerwald, as we are about to do the album ranking of Sonic Youth. So this is the second week of a trio of weeks where we are individually just kind of doing a wish list pick of an artist for us to do. Last week we did Billy Joel, which was Joe's pick. This week, because of a runoff community poll winner, a battle between Sonic Youth and the Replacements, you guys out there voted for Sonic Youth. I was torn between the two, so thanks everybody for voting. I do think we'll get to the Replacements eventually. The reason why I picked Sonic Youth was actually because when you guys did the Foo Fighters video, the side 3, we were talking about some of our favorite artists that we don't consider to have a 5-star album. One of the ones for me that came to mind was Sonic Youth, who is one of my all-time favorite artists, top 100 for sure, probably not top 50. But when I thought about what my favorite Sonic Youth album was I was like, I don't think that's a 5-star album. And it made me kind of want to go through everything. Sonic Youth, obviously pioneers of lo-fi, garage rock, experimental, avant-garde rock. There's like 1,000 different names for what they kind of do. Were very underground popular in the 80s and then got a little bit more popular in the 90s. They even headlined Lollapalooza in the mid-90s and then broke up in 2011 when Kim Gordon and Thurston Moore broke up. The trio of them with Lee Ranaldo is kind of the core band of Sonic Youth coming out of the New York City scene, and they've had different members throughout. But yeah, for me, and I think for everyone, Sonic Youth is kind of a take it or leave it act. If you like them, most of their albums stick. If you don't, pretty much none of them are. So for me personally, I knew a lot of these. I didn't know the first couple, although I knew the EP, which I thought was their first album up until this point in time when I learned it was just an EP. We're not really counting it. 15 studio albums in total. And then some sporadic ones throughout that I didn't really know. But they're an artist, even though that I love them, I don't really go back to them aside from maybe my top 2 albums that often. So this was a nice exercise. I will give Joe some credit for sitting through this. Even I had trouble getting through all of this Sonic Youth in 1 week. It is a difficult, large pill to swallow all at once. They're much better in small doses and when the mood strikes you. So what are your guys' initial thoughts? And how familiar were you with Sonic Youth going into this?
Jason, you better go first, since you have a little more experience with this band, and I got a lot to say.
I like Sonic Youth. Some of their albums more than others. I think there's a window in their discography that I like. Actually, there's 2 windows that I like. Everything outside of that, not crazy about. So not take it or leave it for me. I kind of pick and choose which ones I like. Going into this, I don't know exactly how many I've heard, maybe about half of them. At one point, when I was doing the channel by myself, I was going to do Sonic Youth. And then I started listening to some of the early ones, and I was like, I'll just save this for another time. Yeah, about half of them probably I knew. Didn't know the really early stuff, and then some random ones in like the late 90s, early 2000s that I didn't know.
I listened to Bad Moon Rising for 1985, our albums of the year list, because I couldn't find anything I really liked in 85. I said, I'll take a chance. I've heard some good things about this Sonic Youth group. Really didn't like that one. Whew, that was bad. So 88 came along, and I was like, all right, maybe it's just a phase for them. They got out of it. I've heard sterling reviews for Daydream Nation, and didn't quite gel with me either. So that was the extent of my Sonic Youth listening experience until this week. I don't want to insult everyone who likes Sonic Youth. I need someone to explain to me why they like Sonic Youth like I'm a 5-year-old. I don't get it. I don't understand why they ever became popular. And they never really were that popular. They've never had a gold album So it is sort of like a real niche thing. But I do hear their influence in modern, later day indie bands that I don't like. So obviously, like the influence is there. They're good at what they do. I just hate it is what they do for the most part. There's some surprises in here, so we'll get through that when we get through the albums. But for the most part, not my thing. Was never going to be my thing. Will never be my thing, and I'm fine with that. I hope everyone else is okay with that too.
Fair enough. And because of that, hats off to you for getting through this. Obviously, I don't like Billy Joel from last week, but I do like what it is he does. So it wasn't, probably as torturous for me getting through Billy Joel as it was for you getting through Sonic Youth, especially just because of kind of the mood Sonic Youth can put you in, especially the earlier albums. So thank you for being a great team player.
I will say one thing. I have a album that is significantly higher rated than any Billy Joel album that you gave. So apparently I like the peaks of Sonic Youth better than you like all of Billy Joel. So take that how you will.
If you haven't watched the Billy Joel video, check that out. We're only talking about Billy Joel because we did it last week. No one on earth thinks they sound the same. Everyone relax. But yeah, for my Billy Joel rankings, I went from the lowest 1.5 star to the highest 2.5 stars. So I think it's best that we kind of follow a similar format and lead off with Joe, who will be the most annoyed with this artist, Jason in the middle, and then I'll close it out.
All right, my bottom, and I tried to get this on our list of worst albums ever, our March Badness, because I just think it's really terrible. And I feel like they should know better by now. I got New York City Ghosts and Flowers at 0 stars. I don't want to give away like why I hate this one the most because it sort of plays into the preceding albums or the ones that came before. I'll just say that, I thought they had gotten out of this sound, this sort of like real lo-fi, real droney, just like chanting, dissonant guitars, a lot of ambient sound collages, and just all the stuff that I really don't like about Sonic Youth and the whole genre. I was hoping we'd move past that. They come back with this one. There's one track that I didn't absolutely despise on this album. Just terrible, 0 stars.
Pretty much saw that coming. I think it's safe to say that there are very few instances of avant-garde experimental stuff that you really like. Like you don't really like Velvet Underground and all that kind of stuff. So this is not surprising.
All right. The bottom for me, number 15, is their first LP. Confusion is Sex. I've got it at 1 star. And normally 1 star for me means that I think it's bad. But it's hard for me to say that I think this is a bad record. It's just so disconnected from what I usually listen to that it's hard to even judge it. It's almost like being a jazz novice and having never listened to jazz before. You might enjoy it or not enjoy it, but to know why or to differentiate anything like that, it's hard to say because this record is really noisy, really abrasive. It's not that well recorded, really kind of slow and plodding stuff on it. So I don't know. It's not enjoyable. I don't like it very much, but I don't think that they're trying to make something that's like poppy or catchy or even melodic at all. That's not their intention. So it's hard for me to say that they're missing the mark. It's just not really what I'm looking for. So they're a hard band to judge in that way because I don't listen to a lot of avant-garde stuff or noise rock. So it's a little out of my ability to even judge it properly.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the debut. Confusion is Sex. I have it as my number 15. I kind of get what you're saying. I'm going to give it 2 stars, even though it's like you said, it's not a terrible album. It's nothing I really ever want to listen to. I think it's important, especially for them. And I think, they don't miss the mark. It's exactly what they're going for. No wave, post-punk, noise, experimental, avant rock, whatever you want to call it. It's not a great listening experience. There's some things I like about it. Some of the drumming is cool. It's a really cool exercise in mood and style. It's very dark and experimental. Having not known this or Bad Moon Rising, I didn't know how straight up just like dark and broody some of the stuff was. Like Shake Hell is like straight up creep show at times with like shake off your flesh. It's like out of like a creepy black and white like student film almost. It's not great. It establishes some of their foundation, but yeah, I'm going 2 stars for Confusion is Sex.
My number 14, same, Confusion is Sex. I give it a little bit more credit than Ghosts and Flowers just because they didn't know any better. They didn't know what they were doing. They're just throwing stuff at the wall, recording it. I mean, did they go into this album thinking we're just going to make the worst possible listening experience possible? Like, was that their goal? Like, if that's their goal, then it's a 5-star album. Like, if their goal was to be repellent, no wave, as they called it, I guess, as somebody calls it. That's what it says on Wikipedia. It's like Jason said, it's impossible for me to really judge this because in my mind, it's a 0. Like, I would never in a million years listen to this entire album. I would turn it off after the first song, or maybe give it 2 songs. So it's tough for me to judge. For my taste, it's a 0. It might be a great sort of example of this style, but I've never heard anyone else do this style. I don't know why anyone would do this style. So I don't know. It's tough. I'm sure it's beloved amongst the post-punk, no wave, whatever crowd, but it's really hard to listen to. I wouldn't ever say to someone, listen to this, but if you're a completionist, I guess you have to. So I don't know. It boggles my mind that any music executive or whoever was like, yeah, let's get this band. Let's sign them.
It would be really good if you were throwing a Halloween party and you really wanted it to be like disturbing and everyone like uneasy and you just put it on.
All right, my number 14 is the sophomore LP, Bad Moon Rising. For me, they are just like getting incrementally, I don't want to say better even, because as we discussed, maybe not the goal to be more traditionally rock, but incrementally more towards that with every release. This one is slightly better recorded than Confusion is Sex. Brave Men Run feels a little bit more traditionally structured as a rock song, at least, than anything on Confusion is Sex. Kim Gordon, I think, is singing with a lot more authority on this record, more confidence, but there's still a lot of stuff that's just really, really kind of a tough listen for me. Society as a whole, Ghost Bitch, really kind of plodding, lackadaisical bass. It almost sounds like she's tuning rather than playing a song. Just not something that I would return to. 1 star, Bad Moon Rising.
All right, my number 14. I've got NYC Ghosts and Flowers at 2 stars out of 5. So me and Joe are Sonic Youth Brothers so far, my friend. Oh, much love. But yeah, Joe said it right when he was like, why go back to this after all this time? This is like their 10th album or whatever, 11th, and it's their most directionless because at least there was direction on the first one. It does sound better, but like the ultra spoken word stuff, the beat poetry, especially on like Small Flowers, Crack Concrete and Side to Side, they already do this, but with like their own spin. So this is just like taking a step back. It's nothing they haven't really done before with their like artistic vision. They're just kind of stripping it all away. And the thing that I don't like most about this album is like anyone like Joe or whoever else had negative stuff to say, they're just like inviting it now. They're basically saying like what you're describing, all the other stuff as our stuff isn't like that, but this is. So I think there's moments that have cool guitar on it, but you know, it's too dark for its own good. And some of the background music really distracts from some of the lyrics, which I think are supposed to be the focus. But yeah, not something I'm going to listen to. 2 out of 5. One that I haven't heard before. So NYC Ghosts and Flowers, number 14.
My number 13 is me Bad Moon Rising. I guess I give it half a star. Moving on up here. I think, like, I know it wants to be interesting, and I think probably it has some interesting things to say. I do kind of like their lyrics. Like, I don't think they're bad lyricists by any means. And I think they usually have a good criticism of American culture, misogynistic society, and whatever else. You know, this one was about sort of the dark underbelly of Reaganism in the 80s. That's fine and good. But I just don't understand why they package that with this type of music. Like, who are you going to reach other than people who already kind of feel and think the exact same thing? Like, I don't know. I just don't get it, because the music is still so hard to listen to. Are they just talking to themselves, like making this music for themselves and people who already are going to share their exact same viewpoints on this? Like, Kansas Farmer listening to this album and being like, you know what? They're right. Reagan sucks. Down with capitalism. They're kind of just preaching to the choir. So I don't quite get, the emphasis on all that. I don't know. It seems like music made for not even critics. I just don't understand who they're making this for, why anyone would want to listen to it. It's bad music, slightly better than the first album, but still it sounds like they just, like Jason said, they sound like they're tuning the whole time. When they're playing, like when they were practicing, when they would like accidentally play like in the same key, would they stop and be like, wait, can't do that. We gotta cut that shit out. Like, I just don't understand how you could even make this music. So I don't know.
My number 13 is New York City, Ghosts and Flowers. It kind of starts with, I guess, Washing Machine probably, where they like build up to like this great sound, which I consider kind of their signature sound. And then starting with Washing Machine, it kind of starts to fall back apart. And I think this is kind of the completion of their de-evolution. It's really just like a return to the early records. I think the biggest problem is there's like a almost lack of drums on it. And when there are drums, it's more kind of like tom work. It's more tribal. There's like no driving force behind this record. The whole thing just kind of floats there and nothing really ever happens. So it's just kind of a boring listen. Yeah, not great. Everything else you guys said about it, I agree with. 1 star.
All right, my number 13, I'm with Joe, but with a much higher rating. I got Bad Moon Rising at 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's a good album, and I recommend it. Joe, you're just not approaching this the right way. You're saying, who are they reaching? Why are they making this? Sometimes artists make things because they want to or feel like they have to, and that's that. This album isn't meant to produce singles for the radio. It's really just like a big painting. It's just like a big tapestry of ideas. But that's what experimental kind of music is. I mean, in a nutshell, you're either like it or you don't. I love the malevolence on this. It rules. There's this cool, uneasy tension. You're like really just everything's lurking. You're waiting for something bad to happen. Really gets under your skin. I love the textures. In the song I'm Insane, there's like these distant chapel bells. It's really cool. And the whole thing has like this beat poetry, like injected with poison. So ominous and seductive with its evil, which I didn't know they had. Like I said before, they don't have so much on the first few albums. They kind of get away, but like there's, even a lot of references to Satan, and Joe's right, the commentary on, current political status and kind of getting into the underground shadowy evil lurking around us all and from our past, sort of like The Shining, where it's like our demons from the past are haunting us. So I think it's a good album. Obviously, it's a different kind of album. I like it for what it is. My biggest piece of the thing that perplexes me the most, I can't decide if I love or hate the album cover. At times I think it's really cool, and then at times I think it looks like a Goosebumps book cover of like that scarecrow or whatever, but I like it a lot. 3 stars out of 5 for me, which probably kills Joe to say I like Bad Moon Rising more than any Billy Joel album.
It doesn't just kill me. That's the most insane thing I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
You've said that 10 times on this channel.
No, I mean, I think this is for real. That's probably the worst thing I've ever heard. That's fine. I mean, that's you, man. I think everything about that album just sucks. The drumming is so bad on that album. And that is one of the reasons I do like some of their stuff later, because they get a new drummer after that, I believe. I don't know. I'm lost. But I mean, it doesn't matter. Not all these albums are pretty much the same. I'm going to go with Washing Machine. And I guess I kind of forgot that this is sort of where they started falling apart. I wrote down not just bad, but actively repellent. So I must not have liked this one at all. I feel like there was one song, Little Trouble Girl. I like when Kim Gordon does sort of like the whispery vocals. Like, she has a really cool style that doesn't get used enough. They sort of turned to her during the glory days, so to speak, of Sonic Youth, when I really kind of start to be like, okay, they have something here. I kind of like this, but they don't do it enough. And on this one, they're kind of getting back to that super lo-fi sound that they started out with. And yeah, the 20-minute instrumental at the end is just, again, just get the hell out of here. The Diamond Sea, come on. One half star for Washing Machine.
Now all I want to know is if you would like Pavement more than Sonic Youth. It's the only thing on my mind right now, because they are the Beatles probably compared to these Sonic Youth albums.
The biggest problem with Sonic Youth for me is just they have too many albums. Like if I condensed it down to like their best 5 or 6, I don't think I'd have much of a problem with them. I think they're kind of cool, not my style, but.
All right, my number 12, still at a 1 star. My last one at a 1 star before we start moving up the rating scale. I have 1,000 Leaves, which was the one right before New York City Goes Some Flowers, part of that de-evolution that I was talking about. And I went back and forth whether or not to put this above or below New York City. The thing that I was considering putting it below it for is because it's so long. It's 73 minutes. You know, they made this record right after headlining Lollapalooza, and they spent all their Lollapalooza money on building their own studio. So they've got all this newfound freedom, and I think that it totally gets away from them. They just like have no focus because they've got infinite amount of time to record and just experiment. And that's what most of it is. It's just all experimental stuff. Very, very little of it holds my interest. I think Snare Girl might be the only song on it that I kind of like. It's kind of like this sweet, dreamy, Yola Tango-esque type song, which I think is pretty good. That's probably the reason why I put it ahead of New York City, but yeah, I don't love it.
All right, my number 12 is going to be Experimental Jet Set Trash and No Star. I'm giving this 3 stars. One thing that was annoying to me while I was going through this week and kind of reading about it, I didn't look at any rankings, but in reading about it, you kind of read what the general consensus was. And pretty much everything since, from Daydream Nation on, they were like, every album someone said, this is the best since Daydream Nation. And this is the best one since this is a return to form. Every single album, some critics said that. And it's like, okay, well, not every single album can be like this. So, I mean, if you're into Sonic Youth, I think you can nuance the albums, but from a general perspective from afar, a lot of it kind of sounds the same. I love how this starts with Winter's Blues, rare, just like acoustic number. And then right off the bat, kind of hope, I know I've heard this before, but I don't remember it all. So after hearing it again, I'm kind of hoping that there's like something new, kind of different happening, because I kind of want that by this point in the chronology of it. But they kind of fall back on a little bit of old fare. You said Washing Machine was when they kind of revert backward a little bit. I think it's kind of here. I like all the songs. I really like Screaming Skull and Androgynous Mind, Doctor's Orders. The album feels like a little sleepy, like it needs some caffeine. You kind of get some of it at the end. It's a little too late by then. And it's got the stripped down sort of flavor, and you would think that means it's like more focused on songwriting. But I don't know. It all just kind of feels very random to me. Maybe a little bit like Leftovers. And then after Winter's Blues, everything kind of just morphs into like one long slog song for me. Everything's got the same temp. And even though there are other albums that are as long as this one, I feel like this one just really feels long, kind of lacking some of those interesting jam pieces that I like. Yeah, I still think there's enough stuff on it to recommend. So I'm going 3 stars, Experimental Jet Set.
Number 11, I got 1,000 Leaves. There's nothing on here to recommend. Sunday would be the only song I kind of liked. It's like this anti-Smashing Pumpkins sort of in sound. Like it's like Smashing Pumpkins, but like perverted somehow by Sonic Youth. So it's kind of cool, but everything's way too long. There's not a whole lot of like actual structure, songs, verses, choruses, bridges, what have you. I think Contre la Sexisme may be their worst song, which is the big pool of songs to choose from, but I think that was my least favorite. So I give it a half star.
We do have a commenter that was like really rallying this album. That was like, you better have that high up on your list when you do Sonic Youth? I can't remember who it was.
Was it like Robert Christgau, the famous music critic who gave it an A+? That's the other thing that bugs me about them, and I know it shouldn't, but the critical acclaim for all this is just so ridiculously overblown. I think they just do it because it makes them sound cool, but that's just my opinion.
You kind of said the same thing about REM, though.
Well, I mean, I didn't know about Sonic Youth really then, so that's a whole different other thing.
All right. My number 11 is Evil, however you say it. This is where Steve Shelley joins the band, and I think he adds so much. Even at the band's most abrasive, he still gives the songs a backbone and some direction. They don't sound so lost. They don't sound like they're just tuning anymore because there's a little bit of a groove now. So that alone, I think, makes this a huge step up from the first two records. I still don't really like any of the songs that much, but you can sort of, him joining the band is really where things start to come together. So it's a step in the right direction, and 1.5 stars for me.
All right, my number 11 is The Eternal, their final album. It's good. I'm giving 3.5 stars to it. It's really good. It's more straightforward. I think it's missing some of the things that are also missing on like everything kind of Murray Street on, that underground brooding, subversive anti-pop vibes. I still like it a good bit. I think Kim has the best stuff on it by far. They're kind of right now blending in with just the rest of the indie rock scene around them. They don't really stand out like they do during their peak. And they never really evolved out of that in a very like drastic way. They're still putting out quality stuff. You know, for a last album, I think they end on a really good note. It's got good songs on it. Yeah, I think it was a good one to end on because where do you go after The Eternal? Like, there's nothing else really for them to do. So 3.5 stars. My number 11, The Eternal.
On to number 10. We're getting up there. Still in the 1-star range. I got Experimental Trash and 1 star. No, I'm sorry. That's Jet Set, Trash, Experimental Jet Set, Trash, and no star. Doesn't matter. Winter's Blues, I liked. I was like, oh, okay. Maybe we're starting off on the right foot here. This could be cool. And then it just gets worse after that. The one thing that I was really kind of liking was Kim Gordon's contributions, and just this album and the couple after it, she's just kind of gone back to just being really annoying more than good. Feels like her vocals have gotten worse. Her bass playing has gotten worse. So I don't know. I had high hopes after a couple albums, but this pretty much put the nail in the coffin. So 1 star for whatever this album's called. Doesn't matter.
People say I was disrespectful in the Billy Joel video, but at least I was enunciating and saying the names of the album.
1 star for Experimental Jet Set, Trash, and no star. They put it in their own headline, so
do your thing. Do your thing, my friend.
Number 10 for me is Sister. Another step towards more traditional rock structures. They're taking baby steps, but they're getting there. I think with that comes some cool interplay between the guitarists. I think this is the first album where they really start bouncing musical ideas back and forth off of each other and kind of intertwining the guitars a little, which I think is a really big part of their sound and the best part of their sound for the next few records going forward from here. I think Catholic Block is a really good example of that. Overall, it's an okay record. I have it at 2 stars. The best is still yet to come, but this is another good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing eye to eye with a mix of both of you guys. Number 10, I've got Evol. 3.5 stars for me. Their third effort. They're, like Jason said, it's like baby steps. And a lot of that's because they're really prolific. I mean, for like a good 20-year period, they pretty much pump them out. This one, they're very slowly transforming into like a noise pop band. I think a lot of the first couple albums could really use more guitar interplay. This one has more of it, far noticeable than before. Obviously, it'll grow from there. And better drum work, like Jason said. I think it's a good album, very important in their catalog. It's like a part of a major transition period. Has their trademark Discord on it. It just, it just lacks some all-time great Sonic Youth tracks, so can't get much higher than that. So number 10, Evolve, 3.5 stars.
I got at number 9. I have a bunch. We're done with the 1 stars, so at least we're moving up the ladder here. I guess I had Sister. I feel like maybe it could be a little higher, but whatever. I put it there. I like Schizophrenia. It's like this kind of evil U2 guitar. Like it's got that sort of ringing, but in kind of a real dissonant kind of opposite of the Edge way, which is cool. I think they kind of play with traditional like rock structures well on this. And if they had just like a little bit more actual rock pop music, I think I'd like it a lot more. I think Hotwire My Heart is fun. It's a cool cover, sort of plays with like the arena rock, hair metal stereotypes. I think it works well as a rebuke and an homage. Stairs Sanctity is okay. Like there's a lot of songs here that are like close to music I like I can feel it coming. I can hear it in the distance. Not quite there for me, but I definitely think it's an improvement over all the 1-star albums, even though I only have it at 1.5 star because it's just not something I will ever listen to again.
Number 9 for me is Washing Machine. Things get a lot more spacey on this record. They were kind of becoming this almost tight kind of unit. The songs were a lot more focused on the previous records, and all of that kind of starts to unwind here. More space, more noise coming back into this record. It's just a move away from what I was liking about the prior records. So for me, this is the door closing on their first classic period. A little bit of a disappointment. It's still okay. I think it's better than the really early stuff for sure. I have it at 2.5 stars.
All right, my number 9, I've also got Sister, 3.5 stars. It's part of this transition period where they're still doing like that no wave experimental things, but they're trying out a little bit more like traditional rock and pop structures. They're not afraid of like their garage lo-fi status. They're like showcasing a little bit more songwriting prowess. It's not quite as frenetic. The noise pop's coming into play. You also get some more instruments and some experimentation there with like acoustic guitar. It's more tuneful. Haven't really reached their potential yet, but I do think it suffers from being very top heavy. Schizophrenia, I got Catholic Block. Stereo Sanctity is good, but I don't think the second half is nearly as good as the first half. So just 3.5 stars to my number 9 for Sister.
My number 8 is going to be Murray Street. It's definitely an improvement over NYC Ghosts and Flowers. They're sort of coming back from that weird no wave experimental stuff. It's a little bit more structured, a little bit more actual, rock music, if you can call it that. I don't know if they decided they wanted to be a little bit more like the indie bands that they had inspired or why they kind of came back, but some okay songs on here. Again, Kim Gordon she seems wasted. Not like drunk, but like wasted on these albums. Her material was really strong for a while, and then it was, something I looked forward to, what she would do, and then just not working here. So 1.5 stars. It just nothing on here that really grabbed me. Most of the songs, actually, 4 songs are at least 6 minutes long. And that's just too long for a Sonic Youth song.
Agreed. My number 8 is Murray Street. Also starts great with Empty Page and Disconnection Notice, which is like this cosmic, spacey, folk, psychedelic thing. Kind of a unique track in their discography. I don't think they have much else that sounds like it. In general, all of the short tracks are really good, except for Plastic Sun, which is kind of annoying. But it's got, like Joe said, all these really long tracks that weigh it down and don't hold my interest at all. So it's like half really good and half still a little just cumbersome. They were on their way to something good. I'd still consider it a good bounce back after the previous 2 records. I think it's kind of the start of their final phase where I think they're really, really good again.
My number 8 is 1,000 Leaves. I've got it at 3.5 stars. To me, it's a bit of a copy of Washing Machine, maybe a bit softer. The thing I like about Washing Machine is like there's this connective, girly, like Kim Gordon tissue to it. But this one is a little more aimless than that. There's great stuff. Wildflower Soul is one of the best jams. Sunday's really good, like Joe mentioned. Frost is cool too. By this time, since I did this chronologically, I'm really wanting something a little bit different. Don't get it. I also don't like how they bulk together some of the longer tracks. Like there are 2 occasions where the longest tracks are just back to back. Really weighs it down. They need to be broken apart. But I think it's still a really good Sonic Youth record. So 1,000 Leaves, 3.5 stars. My number 8.
My number 7. We are all the way up to 7 already. I got Sonic Nurse. And at this point, I'm all the way up to 2.5 stars. So we skip right past 2 stars. We're up to 2.5 stars. This is the kind of music I can kind of get behind because it has form. It has function. It sounds like things that I understand. I'll say that. Take a shot at myself. This kind of has the indie rock kind of blueprint, the kind that they basically set, and now they're kind of coming back around and saying, okay, you imitators out there, you block parties and you YOLO tangos and whoever else, we can do this kind of stuff too. I think Dripping Dream has some great guitar, just like histrionics, very cool. Stones, another kind of hard rocker. And I like... there's certain things about Sonic Youth, when they do, I like. I like the big, super heavy guitar that they put in. I like the faster they go, the more I like them. When they're doing the mid-tempo kind of plodding stuff, it just never connects. When they kind of speed up and they do the big sort of like, not raw, it's like anti-Zeppelin because it's still sort of dissonant and kind of weird sounding, but it's like overwhelmingly kind of like in your face. And it's cool. It's not something that other bands really ever did. So that is kind of like their trademark. And I like that. And I wish they would do that a little bit more. But this is sort of, it's hard to talk about because I don't want to give away everything. But like this album, I think they get back to that sort of like big, huge guitar sound I like. And they've moved away from the no wave stuff that was dragging them down in the early 2000s and late 90s.
Okay, my number 7 is Experimental Jet Set, Trash, and No Star. This record is definitely less focused than its predecessors, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff on it. Winter's Blues, like you both said, is really cool. It reminds me of like really early Beck stuff, like Mellow Gold and earlier. Screaming Skull is cool with all its name dropping, and Self-Obsessed and Sexy is cool, kind of moody, atmospheric rocker. There's a lot of cool tunes. There's a lot of cool moments on it, but it doesn't really grab you the way Goo or Daydream Nation do. It's not as in your face. The guitars aren't as frantic. It kind of meanders a little bit, but I like a lot of it. So I don't know. I have it at 3 stars right now, but I feel like this one is probably a grower. And if I spend a lot of time with it, it might bump up to like a 3.5. I don't know that it necessarily really is inspiring me to spend that much time with it to give it the opportunity to do so. But I feel like if I did, it would.
All right. My number 7 is Rather Ripped, still in 3.5 star territory. All mine kind of shuffle around there for probably a big aggregate score, but I think this is really good. Great guitar playing, really tight and focused. Objectively, it's just like some of their best, tightest playing and writing, but it's just missing some of the stuff that makes Sonic Youth. Kind of like the same complaint I have with The Eternal. They're kind of just sounding like everyone else a little bit right now. Just kind of typical indie rock fare. It almost sounds like it's like a Built to Spill album, to be honest, which is fine. I still like it on its own. 3.5 means I think it's really good. But I want that subversive element. I want some of that mooniness. I want some of the experimental jams. I do think on some songs, the drums are a little too busy here, but I think Incinerate is great. Do You Believe in Rapture is really cool. I do think this is probably their worst lyrical album. Some of it is just a little bit pedestrian for the rest of their stuff. A little basic. It's still fine. Nothing to really complain about. But like on like Sleeping Around, Rats, I think Rats is really good, but I don't think it's their best lyrical album. Lights Out is really cool, very moody. I like that, one of the moodier ones. Pink Steam is really good, mostly instrumental, has some really nice guitar on it. So not a whole lot to complain about, just not in my top tiers, is like right at the midway point, 7 out of 15. So Rather Ripped, 3.5 stars for me.
My number 6, Rather Ripped. I think I agree with most of what Kramzer said on this. It's a little more straightforward. It's kind of, in the world that they created and the bands that came after them and adopted the sound. This is sort of without those weird experimental, long, dissonant jams that I don't like. So we kind of like it for opposite reasons. But I think the songwriting musically is good throughout. It's interesting enough for me. I really like the first 4 songs. Rena, Incinerate, Do the Rapture, and Sleeping Around are all good. Rats is cool. I kind of wish Ranaldo sang a little bit more. Like he kind of seems underused in that regard. I usually find myself, I'll listen to an album and I'm like, I like this song, and then I look at who's singing it, and by the end I kind of figured out. I didn't really know at first. I couldn't tell them apart, but towards the end I was like, okay, another song I like sung by Ranaldo. Why don't they use him more? I kind of wish Thurston Moore would tune himself down a little bit, let the other guys sing a little bit more. But Kim has plenty of vocals on this one, and I think she sounds better. So it's a totally decent album. I'd still probably give it, I wrote down 2.5. Yeah, I'll go with 2.5, but it's probably closer to 3 than 2, we'll say.
I agree that I wish Ranaldo sung a little bit more. Like you, I would be like, oh, what is this track? Oh, that was Ranaldo, yeah. Thought there was something different about it.
My number 6 is going to be Dirty. I think this is the record of theirs that probably fits into the alt-rock landscape of the time better than any other record of theirs. Not that big of a leap to get from this to like Smashing Pumpkins or something, or some artist that was selling a ton of records. This is kind of the closest they ever got to that. A lot of cool songs on here. Chapel Hill's great. Drunken Butterfly, Sugar Cane, I think is awesome. I just think it's missing a little bit of the personality that Goo and Daydream Nation had. Still really good. Still really tight, focused record. Not quite peak. I think it's a step down from their 2 prior records. So I got it at 3 stars.
All right, my number 6 is going to be Washing Machine. I'm at 4 out of 5 star territory here. I think it's a great album. I think it's the most underrated among Sonic Youth enthusiasts. Although, like I said before, there is one critic that said it was a return to form to Daydream Nation, and every single album was. But it's really wide open, a lot of nice jamming, which I've always liked, but it's crafted in like a different way. It's not as improvised. I think it's really smart in the way they shift. Goes like seamlessly, some songs from like this angry grunge garage sound to like this dreamy, weird, perplexing stuff, and back again. Title track is a nice, great long, like allegorical tale. Could maybe call this like their prog album if you had to. Obviously, it's not going to be in our poll among Yes and Jethro Tull and King Crimson. It's not prog by any means, so relax on the comments. But if you had to pick one, it'd probably be this one. And I think the songs and the parts are kind of connected in this nice, unusual fashion, probably because this is kind of the most Kim album to date. She steals the show. The songs she sings are among the best. And even the ones that she doesn't have like this girly daintiness to them, like song like Unwind is very sweet. I think it's really great. Washing Machine, 4 stars out of 5 at my number 6.
We're up to 5. Whew, we are just flying through. Another 2.5 star. I got Evil. I might have to downgrade it in the future because I just saw that my favorite track is a CD bonus track. So I don't know how we feel about that, if we include that in the actual album rankings or not.
You need all the help you can get right now, so let's just...
I'm gonna keep this one because I do think it's a really great song. It's a Kim Fowley cover, but It rocks really hard, and they play it so well. Like listening to that track made me think like these guys could be really good if they wanted to. Like the whole dissonance and sound awful thing, it's all just an act. I knew it.
You're talking about Bubblegum, obviously.
Yes, Bubblegum, the track sounds like Black Sabbath. It's great, and they rock. Like they can really rock if they want to. There are some other cool stuff on this album. It's weird that I have this one so high, especially after you guys had it so low. So I don't really know what's going on here. But I think Tom Violence is really cool. I love the big giant bass sound on it. Without Shadow of a Doubt is really cool as well. The whispering vocals, especially like Pretty a little bit. It seems like there's a lot of reverb, like extra echoey reverb on the guitars on this, and it kind of covers up sort of some of the dissonance that I don't like. It gets a little weird after, I guess the B side is pretty weird. Kind of drags it down a little bit. It's a little more avant-garde and out of my usual like. But even there's this weird kind of vibe to it that I kind of dig. Even the spoken word of In the Kingdom, number 19. I don't mind it here because it kind of sets the mood well. Comes after some sort of almost pop, almost rock songs. I don't know. There's something about this that I just kind of liked from the beginning. I don't know why. I'm probably not going to go back and figure it out, but for whatever reason, I got Evil 2.5 stars. My number 5, Sonic Youth.
That is really weird because once you started to get into other stuff other than the early, I was like, did he forget about? Because that would have guessed bottom for you.
My number 5 is Sonic Nurse. I think they do a great job on this one of building off the more successful moments on Murray Street. They get back some of their mojo from their classic period. I think on this one, there's a lot of really cool moments on this. Unmade Bed, I think is one of their coolest songs ever. I think it has one of Thurston's best vocals that he's ever done. Just a really cool atmosphere on that track. And these last 3 records, I think, are all really good. I mean, they're kind of straight ahead and maybe not as adventurous as like hardcore Sonic Youth fans would want them to be. But I think for more casual listeners like myself, they're really easy to get into and just pretty enjoyable, good records. So yeah, the last 3 records they ever made are all in my top 5.
Yeah, and that was kind of the narrative that our commenters gave for Joe to hold his hand through this was go in reverse. It'll be a lot easier that way. I also have Sonic Nurse at number 5. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Don't really remember mentioning it in 2004, even among my like notable honorable mentions. And that's just a testament to 2004, how loaded of a year that was. But I really like it. There's some brighter guitar tones here, definitely some more thumping bass and drums, some different drum styles, like on the tone work on Unmade Bed. Stones is really cool. They're riding, like Jason said, off the momentum of Murray Street before it. A little more punch and energy, I would say, than Murray Street. Love the lyrics of Kim Gordon on the Arthur Doyle Hand Cream. Love the lyrics by Kim Gordon on Kim Gordon and Arthur Doyle Hand Cream, especially the "How was your date with Eminem" line. That was great. I always love when she does the whispery vocals, which Joe alluded to, especially like on "I Love You Golden Blue." Whole thing has a really nice, smooth sound to it. Even though at the same time, I would say it's meatier and more rockin' than Murray Street, it's still smooth. Does kind of nicely mellow out at the end, which I think is really good. And I've thought before, especially on some of these later records, that Thurston Moore kind of sounds like Jay Mascis sometimes when he sings. He really does on Peace Attack, really does. Even some of the guitar sometimes. And they toured with Dinosaur Jr., I think, like maybe 10 years before this. And you can like almost immediately hear in their discography after they spent time there because the guitars really amp up. But yeah, I think Sonic Nurse is a great album. 4 out of 5 stars. My number 5.
They go way back with Jay to the early days in New York City, and I think Jay produced the demos for Goo.
Oh, no shit. I didn't know that. I just knew they toured in the early 90s, like a killer lineup with them, and I think the Breeders and Babes in Toyland and stuff.
Yeah, Jay Mascis was actually the vocal, I think, like coach on Goo or something as well. Like he was there, he was helping him out. My number 4 is Daydream Nation. I don't get the hype, obviously. No idea why people really love this. I think it's pretty good. I can see why people like it more than their early stuff because this is sort of where they start to incorporate actual form and rockness, and it kind of fakes you out because the first minute or two of Teenage Riot is sort of that same atonal, and then they kind of kick in with like, oh, okay, this is like a real, honest to goodness, pretty decent rock song here. And I like all of these. I think the songs get too long. Like, I don't know if I needed 7 minutes of Teenage Riot. I could have used like 3.5, and I think it would have been a pretty catchy, rock song at the optimal length. The Sprawl at like 8 minutes, Cross the Breeze at 7, Total Trash 7.5. Cut those in half. Once you get to the second half, side 3, with Hey Joni, Providence, Candle, Rain King, all cool, very much sort of experimental kind of weirdness, but still in that kind of rock. The form is there, the verse, the chorus, the bridge, it's all there. All their friends are there. Interesting songwriting, cool guitars. It's just maybe a little bit too much of that sort of mid-tempo. Like I like that really fast sort of thrash sound, which they finally kind of get back to on Eliminator Jr., which is part Z of Trilogy, that the last song on side 4. And on my playthrough, it's a separate track, but apparently it's all on one track on the record. So, but that's a great song. I love Eliminator Jr., probably my favorite on the whole album, one of my favorite Sonic Youth songs, although I didn't count it because it's not really its own song. So the other two kind of drag it down, but there's some cool stuff on here. Even, almost metal, almost punk, almost thrash, which I find cool, but I don't quite get the hype, but I don't know. I'm just, a hopeless case, I guess. 2.5 stars for Daydream Nation.
All right, my number 4 is going to be their final album, The Eternal. I've got this at 3.5 stars. I think it's really good. Maybe their most accessible record to a beginner, someone new to their catalog. It's a lot like Rather Ripped, but I think a little bit heavier. The guitars are a little meatier, almost getting into like some stadium rock kind of tones with their guitars, almost like, I don't know, Foo Fighters or something on some of the riffs. If you're looking for really noisy, avant-garde, experimental stuff, not going to be the record for you. But if you're looking for riffs and songs and some catchy melodies, this is a place to turn. A good record and a good way to go out. I really like Antenna. Malibu Gas Station is really cool. I don't think there's really any bad songs on it. I think it flows pretty well as an album also. So number 4, The Eternal.
It is definitely completely different spectrum from where they started the timeline with Confusion of Sex to that. So pretty interesting.
Even just going from like 1,000 Leaves or New York City to that is within a couple of years a total turnaround.
All right, my number 4 is going to be a 4-star album, one that I think might be slightly overrated by Sonic Youth fans. I think this is usually a top 2 for the Sonic Youth enthusiasts. Is going to be Goo, which I still think is great, kind of playing off their newfound credibility after Daydream. More overly like obvious pop culture references in the lyrics, songs about Karen Carpenter. Kim is getting more responsibility here, which is nice. Her songs are great. I do think the first half up through My Friend Goo is, I still like the second half, but I think it always hurts when it kind of just goes off a cliff a little bit and doesn't end well. Yeah, I mean, I've got nothing to complain about. Dirty Boots, Tunic, Mary Christ, Cool Thing. Yeah, I mean, the first 6 songs I think are amazing. We're pretty much all considered for my top 10 Sonic Youth songs in there. Some of them made it. And it might just be that I like my top 3 just a little more than Goo. But yeah, I got no complaints. Just my number 4 stars for Goo.
Number 3. I have The Eternal at number 3. I got it all the way at 3 stars. A cool record that doesn't sound much like Sonic Youth. I mean, it does, but all the sort of what I would call pretentious artiness is kind of put aside. You know, you got those really kind of cool guitar harmonics on Leaky Lifeboat, Walking Blue, cool guitar sound. Sacred Trickster is cool. I think it's just all pretty good rock songs. There's nothing too avant-garde, too out there. For my sort of regular pop rock ears, all pretty good. And I don't know why they didn't do this more often, have more than one vocalist on tracks. They do it a lot on this album. I like the harmonies. I think they all sound good together. They're obviously all good singers. And I don't know why they didn't do more of the harmonies, because I think it sounds really cool, adds a whole new dimension. And I'm sure they did it at some point before this, but this is really the first time I noticed and kind of like actually wrote down that I really like that style. So I don't know why they didn't do that before. I just feel like someone should have gone back in time and told them that they could be really awesome and write really good. They could probably have been really popular, million album sellers. They just got to do a couple of different things. And I think eventually they do those things. They just sort of waited too long for me, but I'm not their target audience, so what the hell do I know? But I did like this album. 3 stars for The Eternal.
My number 3, another 3.5-star album, is Rather Ripped. I think it's really good. Similar to The Eternal, not quite as heavy and maybe a little bit more nuanced. But I think it's really cool. A lot of these songs are really immediate. Like the first time I heard them, I really liked them. Incinerate, Do You Believe in Rapture, Jams Run Free. I think if Incinerate was on Dirty and came out in the early 90s, I think it would have been a huge hit. I think it's their most immediate song. As soon as those riffs on it are so great and catchy, and I think that's a really good tune. But yeah, I think it's a good record. Another one that's not as experimental, more song focused, more riff focused. I think maybe their core audience doesn't like these albums as much, but I think for us regular folk like me and Joe, kind of in the sweet spot.
All right, my number 3, going up to 4.5 stars, which is where I peak. For the next 3, it's going to be Dirty. I think probably their most ferocious album. This is the album after their work with Jay Mascis on Goo and touring with them, and you can really hear it. Guitars are heavier, meaner, louder, tighter. I think this is 92, and I think you can credit them to sort of influencing grunge a little bit in the 80s, and now they're surrounded by it, and I think they're adapting to it, and it feels very grungy at times. I love the songwriting here. I think it's their most fun record. There's a song entirely derived from lyrics from Heart, Drunken Butterfly, which is really cool. Sugarcane, Marilyn Monroe's great. I think this album is the closest they get to just being like a rock and roll band or a grunge rock band. I think there's a lot of great writing techniques, some really broad themes told through like these intimate stories. Then some really like obvious, powerful stuff like Youth Against Fascism. 100% is great. Swimsuit Issue is great. Drunken Butterfly, Shoot. Ranaldo singing on Wish Fulfillment. It's awesome. Yeah, I think it's great. Damn near masterpiece, if you ask me. So, Dirty, number 3.
Dirty, number 2. I like this album. This is along with, well, you know what number 1 is. It's Goo, obviously. Now it has to be. There's no other ones. But Dirty kind of continues sort of where they went on Goo. And I think the drumming on this and on Goo is great, like immediately noticeable. I think the rhythm section in general got a lot better starting with Goo, and maybe that has to do with the production behind it, but it sort of amped it up a little bit. Something like Teresa's Sound World, just kind of cool, like almost psychedelic, 100% great riffs, just a lot of pretty good songs on here. Drunken Butterfly, like Kramzer said, Shoot, Wish Fulfillment, Sugarcane, all kind of top notch. Loses me a little bit with Orange Rolls, Youth Against Fascism, whatever the hell Nick Fit is. Kind of comes back with On the Strip, Chapel Hills, got this kind of cool transformation. And Purr is very cool, punky, fast. Really like it when they get punky and thrashy and fast. I just wish they'd do it a little more, a little less of the sound collages and whatever, avant-garde, no wave stuff. When they rocked, when they really just kind of put their foot on the pedal, they can do some really cool stuff. And there's a bunch of that on this album. And, everyone told me to start at the end and work my way backwards, but I think I should have started right in 1990 and sort of expanded out from there, maybe. Because this is kind of the sweet spot for me. And these are the lesser liked, according to the critics. Still highly rated, but they thought it was a little too normal. So whatever. This is Butch Vig behind the boards, like Kramzer said on Dirty. So I definitely think, and Andy Wallace mixing. So I just think those sort of like outside the world of indie sort of noise rock stuff, bringing in those kind of outside influences really kind of help them turn their dissonant sound into something for people like myself, something that rock fans could really like, even if you don't like Sonic Youth or you're afraid of Sonic Youth. I think this and Goo, I think anyone can listen to them, really. If I can like them, I think anyone can.
All right, my number 2 is going to be Daydream Nation. I've got it at 3.5 stars, but it's like a 3.75. It's kind of I was tempted to put it at 4 stars. For me, this is, even though Sister kind of hints at it, this is the real like start of their classic and best period for me. Teenage Riot's a great opener. Silver Rocket's great. Cross the Breeze. I love the riff on Total Trash. It's like almost poppy. Like even one album ago on Sister, to imagine them doing that would have been unthinkable. Candle's really cool. I love the riff on that one. The drums on this record are really propulsive throughout. There's a lot of energy in the guitars. There's a lot of cool riffs. The solo, if you'd call it a solo, on Kissability is awesome and loud and noisy. It's really cool. I think they really found themselves on this one. It's a classic record. Yeah, really good stuff. Almost 4 stars for me. Maybe someday it'll get there.
It'll get there, I promise you. All right, my number 2 is gonna be Murray Street. An album you guys are really overlooking here. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Comes just in the nick of time, refreshing new territory, really nice restrained songwriting, even in the instrumental parts. I think everything is really crafted with and refined with purpose. I love how Karen Revisited kind of devolves into this like spacious ambient song after some great poppy opening refrains, and letting the playing is different on this one after everything they've ever done. Very harmonious with the vocals. It's the first time they've really kind of interluded the vocals and approached the songs like that with the melodies. It's the best marriage between the vocals and the guitar playing. I think bringing in Jim O'Rourke is just what they needed. It's very mellow and tight, very beautiful and kind of sweet and sour at the same time. And probably my favorite vocals of Thurston Moore, more like relaxed version of them. Guitar interplay is great, even though it doesn't have that really spunky energy, which I love too, that Joe talks about. It's got more like slow moving pop guitar, garage pop melodies, kind of like Pavement almost. Still some really unique guitar textures, even though they're toning down the experimentations. Got some distortion on it, but still very clean. I think it's damn near a masterpiece. It's got just a lot of great moments. I think it works better as an album, though. I mean, it seems weird to review it as like a more focus on songwriting, but only a couple songs that really stand out to me as among the best Sonic Youth songs. But I think it's a really great all-inclusive album. So my number 2, Murray Street, 4.5 stars.
I really wanted to wear my Steely Dan homage to Goo, but I didn't because I figured that would give it away too easily. Goo, my number 1, with a bullet by far. There's just something really cool about this album. Structure-wise, I think it's their closest to traditional sort of boring rock and roll. But I think the secret weapon on here is Kim Gordon. Her work is awesome. Tunic, Song for Karen's a masterpiece. Gothic sadness, all about Karen Carpenter. Kind of reminds me of like what Lana Del Rey would later do, just sort of like whispery kind of, it's just sadness. There's a lot of sadness in that song. Cool Things got a great riff. I think, again, Kim Gordon's lyrics, I think they're very sort of, they're not over the top, but they obviously are taking a shot at, misogyny and sort of the masculine sort of, misogynistic society. I think their lyrics are really good. It just doesn't hurt that it's all kind of paired with guitar that sounds good. Like all of these songs, Moat, great guitar riff on that. Cool Thing almost sounds like a Soundgarden song. So it's just hitting the things that I like, the pleasure centers of my brain, along with the elevated, the arty lyrics and sort of the artistic touches and flourishes that Sonic Youth does. But it also is hitting the sweet spot of my pop rock love. Disappear is another one that's, it's catchy now. Moat, Disappear, super catchy. I really liked Ranaldo's lyrics and vocals on Moat as well. Very dreamy and sort of, it's hard to compare any of these songs to someone else. They don't really sound like anybody else. I don't think anyone else could have really made this album, but it is sort of like a standard big label release. Like it doesn't have that sort of artiness, that indiness that sort of bugs me a little bit. It has all the mainstream bells and whistles, and I just think it's a really tight, good, hard rocking, cool album. It's 4 stars. I might even consider it for my top 5 in 1990. It was a weak year. I didn't listen to this one in 90. I should have. After Daydream Nation, I was like, there's no way they're going to ever make my top 5. So I didn't, those faster tempos, those big production flourishes. We got a winner here with Goo, 4 stars.
I am right there with you, Joe. I have Goo at number 1, and I have it at 4 stars. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think the guitars on Daydream Nation, they're kind of frenetic and frantic. They kind of bounce off of each other and go in all these different directions. I think the guitars on Goo move more in unison, like they're really tight. Unison's the wrong word because they're playing different parts still, but it feels like more cohesive, like they're trying to mold the 2 guitar parts into one sound. So it's just this really like forceful sound coming at you. It's really great. The songs are tightly written as well, really good. Kim Gordon sounds great on it. Tunic, fantastic song. Haunting, beautiful, really kind of sad. Cool Thing is great, classic. My Friend Goo is also great, and I just love the whole attitude of the whole record. It's really got like this FU attitude. It's great. 4 stars for Goo.
Very nice. All right. My number 1 is going to be a consensus choice. Daydream Nation. I did nominate it in 88. It's only 4.5 stars. I don't know why I don't give it the extra half, but I don't. It just doesn't stack up to, when I look at the list of everything else I've given 5 stars to, this one is just a little bit below. And I think it might just be because we kind of touched on this when we talked about Pink Floyd. Obviously, I've given 5 stars to Pink Floyd before, but there's just something for me personally that I really adore about like emotionality and humanity in albums. And I'm always more intrigued and impressed with Sonic Youth than I am of like really connecting and finding like a human nature in Sonic Youth. And that might be what it is. I mean, there are still elements of my personality that I find in Sonic Youth stuff, which is why I like them. But for like my all-time stuff, it doesn't quite hit the chord that some of my favorite all-time stuff does. 4.5 is nothing to sneeze at, and I've been in the 4s for a while, so I think they're a great band, and I think this is a great album. I think Daydream Nation is the best because it's kind of something we've talked about before, where this is like the best showcase of all of their talents to me, especially because it's introducing longer, more unique improvisational jams. Everything takes like a peculiar, unexpected turn. I like kind of that frenetic guitar playing. There's a lot of just like unexpected spasms in the guitar that kind of send it off, aren't just random. It'll just make it do something completely different. And then there's also really subtle guitar work, really odd. I mean, there's not a guitar album out there that sounds like this album, really. It's a kind of a brand new way to use the guitar as an instrument and as a writing tool, which I really like. It's the perfect blend, I think, of their like experimental and like garage noise pop kind of mixture think Teenage Riot is one of the better album openers of all time, especially kind of how Joe put it. It's like the first 30 seconds, you're like, all right, is this kind of the same stuff? I'm just like, oh my God, no, this is different, really cool. And even though there is like an emphasis on more catchier traditional song structure, it does still have that really cool subversive vibe to it, more enthralling experimentation. They don't sacrifice anything about who they are, even though they're trying a lot of new stuff. Is knocking it out of the park. It's a perfect example of being able to expand your own art without abandoning it. And that's why I think Daydream Nation is the best, and all the songs are really good too, just simply put. So that's my number one. I got no problem with people putting Goo up there. It's just not quite my favorite. But man, if you would have told me Joe would have ended the Sonic Youth list by giving 4 stars and saying it could potentially be an Album of the Year nominee, I'll take that as a W. I will. I really will.
Yeah, I had to, reminds me of that line from Shawshank Redemption. I had to wade through you know what it is. But I mean, I was very surprised at how much I like Goo as well. And I just wish that there was more stuff like that. I'm fine with, their discography. It's not for me. It never will be. But, even I can find something I really like in an artist that I'd always just assumed just sucked across the board. So I learned something today.
The way you talked about the moments of Sonic Youth that you really liked makes me like kind of think of other stuff that I think you would like that you might not know as well, like Built to Spill or something. I feel like you would probably be really into it.
Really into it, or just tolerant of it?
Well, I mean, 4 stars is 4 stars.
Yeah, it took a lot of work from them, though. They're just an interesting band because they have the 3 songwriters, 3 vocalists. Their contributions seem kind of all over the place. I guess Gordon and Moore are the 2 main people, but I really don't know much about like the group dynamic. I don't know much about them in general. They're obviously very interesting. It's just they're so tough to get into. I don't think I'll ever quite understand that whole music universe.
For me, Sonic Youth, I would say my top 7 or 8 albums I like and will probably at some point return to. I don't think they're going to get in regular rotation, but I'd say about half of their catalog I like a decent amount, and the other half is a rough listen. That's kind of where I am.
Let us know what your Sonic Youth list is out there in the comments, and comment on our list. Everyone give a big applaud to Joe for getting through this. But if you disagree with them, let the criticisms reign, of course. Jason playing it safe recently on Listography, usually not his calling card. He's usually the I don't like the popular stuff, which isn't true at all. It's just an unfortunate reputation you may have gained. But it's, I had a lot of fun doing Sonic Youth. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Stay tuned tomorrow. We'll continue Sonic Youth Week and talk about our favorite top 10 Sonic Youth tracks. Do not forget to go over to our community page and give us your vote on our prog rock poll, picking one of the bands we have listed to do in a couple of weeks as far as prog rock goes. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter listed in the description below. Stick around all week for Sonic Youth. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.